Now, for reaction to these developments, we're joined by political analyst Thobani Zikalala. Thobani, thank you so much for joining us this evening on News at Prime. Now, what do you make of all that's taking place with the Speaker of Parliament, Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula? I mean, there's been a lot of confusion as well. Initial reports stating that, she's handed herself over. Now we know that she indeed is at home. But what do you make of all of this?
Evening. It's a confusing affair, but also it's an affair that casts a very bad cloud on the politics of South Africa, and of course at the Parliament of South Africa, if its presiding officer, the most senior of them all, is embroiled in such a very big scandal of corruption. I mean, of course, we are not surprised in South Africa with all the scandals that are forever coming out. But when the senior official of Parliament, which is the accounting body for South African Republic, where then such a person is embroiled in this, of course, the confusing thing of whether or not she's arrested or not arrested, whether she's on special leave or not on special leave. And of course, the idea of Parliament having the ability to hold her accountable, and whether or not the deploying political party will also take responsibility of holding her accountable. It's all a confusing affair, but it exposes the rots in South Africa that almost every politician in South Africa has got. And of course, as has been said in the past, there are smaller skeletons and allegations are flying all over. But of course, we must also provide due regard and say the Constitution says to us everyone is innocent until proven guilty. But it's a disappointing affair that shouldn't be the case in South Africa. I mean, when we have a situation where we now have to deal with the Speaker of Parliament going to court and being accused of corruption, it's not something that the Parliament needs to deal with, especially with the many shenanigans and allegations and scandals that it has dealt with over the past. I mean, it's a scandal that Parliament does not need if it still wants to preserve the little of integrity that it has.
And as you mentioned, those smolanyana skeletons, it also shows that almost anyone is not immune of these smolanyana skeletons. But also just speaking about the gravity of this, some experts have said that this move for her to take special leave is actually insufficient. And that's why the DA is saying she should they should submit this motion of no confidence, which they've done as well, but also saying that she cannot unilaterally decide that she's going on special leave. Taking this motion of no confidence in her, is that the best solution to this problem?
I mean, in situations like this, I would want a situation where the person who has facing such allegations takes it upon themselves to recuse themselves of the responsibility that they've been given. I mean, I somewhat agree with those who say it is a little cop-out. It's like taking a break to deal with your skeletons. I mean, I would have advised, if it was me, that already this Parliament has a few months that is going to sit. Take a resignation and stay at home and deal with your issues, because we can't be in a situation whereby we've got a Speaker of Parliament who's on special leave dealing with legal rules and legal issues. It cannot be. We need to have a decisive Parliament, and whether or not the motion of no confidence succeeds, but I think it is a more decisive way to deal with the issue. That's why I said in the beginning, even the deploying party, in this case the African National Congress, should have advised and taken a very firm decision, so that you don't have the Parliament, especially with its presiding officer, embattled in such a very big scandal. I mean, we don't want a situation where you have your presiding officer in front of a court of law, whether or not she's arrested, whether or not she ends up in front of a court of law. But you don't want such a situation, because it brings a very dark cloud over Parliament and the integrity of the Parliament, where its senior official is in that position. So the best thing for me would have said is to step aside. But of course, we know that the step-aside rule again of the ANC and others is not as strong as one may want it to be, because now it waits for someone to be charged and all those things. That she may argue that she is not as charged as yet. But that alone, the fact that there's an allegation which may end up with her being arrested, with a raid at her home, and all these allegations brings a dark cloud that needs to be dealt with as soon as possible.
speaking of that step-aside resolution of the ANC's as well, they're saying, look, until she appears before a court of law, she doesn't actually have to step aside. But don't you think that this is also another missed opportunity, somewhat of an own goal by the ANC yet again, because they could have spoken to their member to say, rather resign. There's only a few months left of this administration and only 1 week left before the political parties go off and campaign anyway. It would have been a stronger stance that would have been taken by the governing party to show that they are serious, in fact, about uprooting corruption. But then to allow her to just take special leave, would you then say that is an own goal?
And for me, the step-aside role of the ANC is not as strong as we may want it to be. And I think it's something that I've said before, that we don't have a strong rule, we don't have a consistent rule. The Integrity Commission of the ANC does not have bites, does not have a clear mandate of what it can do and what it cannot do. Because in this case, the Integrity Commission of the ANC should have been able to be a body that comes into saying, for the sake of upholding the integrity of the ANC and the integrity of the Parliament, Mrs. Nqakula must step aside so that she is allowed a space to clear her name in courts and other platforms. And of course, because again, if you look from the side of the party is engaged in the electoral process. You don't want these small shenanigans, small scandals to defocus you while you are dealing with when you are engaged in the process of elections. It's all these things that I think a leadership of the ANC should have taken a decision to say she must step aside. But of course, also must give them the benefits of the doubt that it's only been 3 days since this thing has come about, and we have not allowed them a situation where they are able to make a decision. But I think a decisive decision should have been for her to step aside and allow Parliament to continue without this cloud, because the integrity of this Parliament and that Parliament is already in question. I mean, its ability to discharge its duties of holding government and holding parliamentarians into account is already in doubt and already in question with the many scandals that it has dealt with in the past term. So to have it at the end, its presiding officer and its most senior presiding officer being the one who's being accused of such charges, it adds into that process of the many allegations and the dark cloud and the aspersions cast on its integrity.
Certainly not a good look just before our elections as well. Thobani, thank you so much for joining us.